I like, I mean, I try to be consistent with everything I do, all my designs, all my, and I've got these guys that are like, oh, we don't do that. Oh, we do that. Why didn't you do, whatever, everything's different. And
Mhm.
I mean, this was going to be, I was close to blowing up. I was just, if it wasn't for
Well,
these cigarettes, there'd be some dead engineers in this. You'd be hearing about a shooting in Chicago at an engineering company.
a shooting in Chicago would not be news. Uh,
Yeah. Nah, it's just, oh, man.
that's routine,
Right.
or in
It was,
Baltimore for that matter.
right. No, it just, I, I've worked at so many different places for so many different clients, and I know what has worked. I mean, I had this really great project. I mean, it was a phenomenal project where everyone cooperated. There was none of this. That's not my job stuff, you
Hmm.
know. And I was the for that job. I was handling field changes, and I was the basically the I was the guy that was supposed to sign off for engineering on design for the electrical side. So everybody was. I mean, it was so much cooperation, and it was a project that was supposed to start up in December, but uh, corporate decides, well, we're going to start it up in June, 6 months early, and we actually did it
Hmm.
6 months early. No issues starting up. I mean, starting up a refinery, that's the most dangerous time for a refinery. Usually, when you hear about an explosion or something going wrong, it's usually during a startup of a unit. So, but we had a smooth startup. We were 6 months ahead of schedule. We came in, last I heard, like 300 million under budget. Um, and I was handling hundreds of requests and changes. The little piddly things. When a valve, if a valve in where I was, the area I was working in, valves are normally we use stainless steel tubing. Well, we get a bunch that comes in with copper tubing, so I gotta write you know a request to have them changed or get the right valve in and stuff like that. And everything, I was getting stuff like within hours. Once it
Hmm.
hits my desk, it was like an hour. Everything was so simple. Now I'm dealing with a bunch of guys that they can't seem to see past their little window. And oh, the one guy, I sent everything out 8 days ago, and I get an email. Did you ever work on that? I sent him an email telling him, yeah, it's done. It's here in this directory. And then I get an email 8 days later. Have you done any work on that project? I'm like, dude, you know, don't you read your emails? It's stuff like that, and it's just getting, and it's constant dealing with what I'm dealing with right now.
Oh, there's Nick. Hello, Nick.
Yeah. Hello.
This is the pub, so there are no standards. You can keep doing whatever you're doing, um, or you can get up to do whatever you want to do. You can come and go as you want. We are on the air actually already, but no viewers. Um, I haven't publicized this one very much. We'll just let it drift out into the ether, and over time, people will watch it. Sometimes we get 30, 40 views.
Is that the most you've seen of the pubs?
I think there's one that's over 60. Uh, but it's not about publicity. It's more just about a gab fest. I leave it out there on YouTube for anybody who wants to watch it. We've had some pretty funny moments, when the right people show up. Now I've got a ton of maybes, and then a couple of guys who replied yes. I know that I know won't show up because they just what they do. They reply yes, and just I don't know to troll me or whatever. It's okay. I'm going to actually send the link out on Twitter, see if anybody wants to pick up there. I'll be back. Talk amongst yourselves. You know Mike Bowler.
Indeed.
Mike's been cranking out the conspiracy podcast lately. No shortage of material, huh?
No shortage of material. Man.
Oh, there's Mike Mongo. Speaking of conspiracies.
What's the conspiracy?
We got Mr. Conspiracy here.
At me?
No, actually
Mike Bowler.
Mike Bowler.
Oh, he is. Mike,
Yeah.
Mike,
Yeah.
are you a conspiracy guy?
I do a podcast.
What's it called?
A Skeptic's Guide to Conspiracy.
Oh, I think I've heard of that, man.
Basically, he calls Alex Jones a lying sack of shit every week.
Okay, that's hysterical.
But he explains what Alex has done to earn that epithet.
Yeah,
That reminds me of the Amazing Randy.
Well, Mike, you know any magic tricks?
No, I don't. That Mike?
Mike Bowler.
Okay.
No.
Oh, he's okay. So he's probably not an escape artist or anything.
I should. My grandfather was really, really good at sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not 100% sure, but he didn't exactly. I don't know how do you put it. He skirted the law quite a bit. Let's put it that way. I don't think he was ever. I don't think he ever went to jail. But he worked in a lot of the casinos that used to run on, back in the 30s and 40s along the Illinois River. Actually, most towns had some type of gambling, underground gambling operations. I guess my grandfather. He was on my dad's birth certificate. Now, this guy was told. My grandfather was totally honest. I mean, he had no tolerance for people who lied. So on my dad's birth certificate, he said he was a bookmaker in a gambling casino. That was his occupation at the time my dad was born. My grandmother hated that. She used to send my dad in with his baptismal. I think it was the baptismal certificate or whatever, saying that was his birth certificate. She hated that. His real birth certificate.
Are we live now?
We are live.
This is reality.
As close
I don't know. Is this real life or is it a fantasy?
Caught in a daydream, no escape from reality.
I just, yeah. Actually, my son played bass in a Queen song last weekend. So I was.
So am I mistaken? Isn't Robert Zubrin joining us tonight?
Not tonight. No, you are mistaken.
Oh, okay, good.
Today's the 15th.
So this is that drinking party version.
Yeah, there's no standards here.
Oh my God.
We can talk about punching sharks or whatever.
Oh my God. Did I talk about that before or something?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, Google.
Well, I
Patrick
mean,
has shown up.
I made it.
Hello, Patrick.
Hello.
oh, hello.
Wait, the gang's all here.
Well, I'm trying to get more people. We have room for more.
I mean, Nick Nielsen is here. That's like exciting to me. That's awesome. That makes me so happy.
Mike, you're the celebrity.
No,
We're
yeah,
supposed
but
to-
you're the intelligent one.
You're
Yeah, thank
supposed-
you.
You're,
Okay, so
you're
I'm
the,
the
you're the
celebrity.
ones.
You see, Nick, I'm not the only one.
Not the only intelligent one, or what?
No, I'm not the only one that said that.
But I would be interested in hearing Mike's stories about the big event or I know there's several of them you've been at, but what was the biggest conference you were just at? Was it the IAS or
ISDC.
ISDC? Right, the Space Development Conference.
That was so awesome, man. It was so
Yeah,
good,
and
Nick. It was so
you gave a pretty high profile address there, didn't you? Give the keynote, or what was the keynote?
Yes. Opening keynote on Friday.
Opening keynote. Well, that's a way to cause a splash.
I mean, there's got to be there's probably 2,000 people at this year's ISDC, and there was probably 800 students, and it was so full. Have you been to the ISDC before, Nick?
Not myself, no.
You should. I'd love to go with you one year. It's a great conference.
Well, they used to have it in Princeton every year, and that's where I went, but I haven't been in a long time.
Next year is in DC, so it's gonna be in Virginia. It's gonna be amazing.
Oh, I'm out of excuses then.
Okay, and
that's a short drive.
And I just have never had that sort of response before. It's a funny thing because I definitely know who I am and I know what I do, and it is often a surprise to people. So when I got there, there was this sort of buzz about that, and then I get there and I'm at my allotted time. I arrive 1 minute, a really hearty 1 minute before I'm supposed to speak. Everybody was in full on panic mode, which is like, I mean, it's not like I just show up and I do it, and then get in there, and everybody was, what is going on? Took the stage, handed them my USB drive. There was complications immediately, and I said, so we just brought it together. We made it work together, and that was how the whole thing kicked off, by showing people that it takes all of us to make it work. It took a number of individuals to do it. We did it quick. I knew exactly what was. The funny thing is, you mentioned magic trick earlier, Paul, and if you know what you're doing when you walk into these situations, you're expecting these things to happen this way, and so it is. But it is fun to watch, I'm sure, as an audience member, because it's like, is this a train wreck? Is this gonna be? And then it turns into fireworks and fun and awesomeness and just the best. And then after that, when they had security guards stationed around me, because it was with all of those students and me telling them, giving them the most important piece of information that they've ever been granted, which is permission to imagine themselves living, working, and playing in space. And then looking over the field, all the crowd, across the room, this giant room in Los Angeles at the Sheraton Gateway, and it's the big conference center. And from one side to the other, making sure I have everyone's attention, all of these people's, all of these heads, and all these eyes, and just scanning the room, making sure that I've got every eye in the room, and letting them know. And I'm not really worried about the grown-ups. Letting all the students know that they have permission to imagine themselves living, working, and playing in space, that is an opportunity for them, and that they can never say that no one gave them permission to do that again, that they leave this room knowing that is an opportunity for them. And, just imagine your inner 10 or 12-year-old hearing those words. And after that, it was just, I felt like Walt Disney. It was so fun, and they just piled all over me, and they're all trying to get selfies, and they're all trying to get me sign everything, their clothes, and I'm like, no, your mom will kill me. They're like, no, you must sign I sign my shirt. No, I definitely cannot. And then all of the grown-ups are all around too, just laughing and enjoying themselves, and it's really the feeling about why we are all of us here, all of us, everyone excited about space in the first place. It's that.
So given the fact that you did this opening keynote and you specifically reached out to the young people, did you find that this had an impact on the tenor of the conference as a whole because it kicked it off that way?
It really did. That's a great observation, because all of a sudden the students they felt like they were a part of the conference as opposed to just skirting around grown-ups. And then grown-ups, it seemed, felt more obliged to engage with students. That is well stated, Nick. That definitely took place, and it was brilliant to behold. In fact, okay. So, Jeff Bezos was there, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, can I tell you a couple embarrassing?
Yeah. Give us a story.
Yeah, I want to hear about Jeff Bezos.
He and I email. Okay, so that's the craziest thing that I can possibly report in this podcast. I email back and forth with Jeff Bezos. So that doesn't make any sense.
You have my eternal envy.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever, because, like I said, I wake up with myself every day and I know exactly what. And so I was engaging with him, and I said, I have a couple of copies of the astronaut instruction manual for his daughter and for another younger friend. And then looking forward to seeing you at the ISDC, and then at the ISDC after the keynote, then it turns out that the ISDC, in their vast wisdom, put together this special meet and greet, which was inclusive of the 22 award-winning students. They have a lot of contests for students, space settlement contests and space mining, and people put together these papers. These students put together these phenomenal papers, really, and posters, and then they handpicked the 22 winners. Didn't tell them what was going to happen. Put them all in a room with a bunch of the NSS elite, like the National Space Society bigwigs, and what do they call that? The hoity-toity. And then, well, they let me know, they're like, can you warm up? Can you like, Jeff Bezos is going to come in this room. We got the special situation set up. Would you mind keeping everybody entertained? I'm tickled, right? So then we get in there, we have a conversation, and I say to the students that are like, the students are in there, the grown-ups in there, and then there's some chaperones as well. And then I get to it, like the grown-ups, everybody knows what's going on. It's not the chaperones, but everybody else. And then I say to the students, I said, you all know why you're here, right? So we're all in this room, and it's a small room, but large in real life purposes. And there's like 50 people in the room max. And then they don't know. And I had no idea that the students didn't know why they were in the room, that they had been hand selected for a personal audience with Jeff Bezos. So I got to say, you've all been hand selected to meet with Jeff Bezos. And I got to watch 12 to 14-year-old heads explode. It was just like one of the high points of my life, really. Just like that. We're not really equipped to deal with that kind of information at that age. And so they were up out of their seats and just couldn't believe it and applauding. And it's a deserved honor. They had earned it. These are all the people who had put in the work. And there's this one 14-year-old, David Blaskov, I think is his name. He's from Romania. And he had written a 90-page paper on space settlements, which he showed me. And he was first place, and it was really good. A 14-year-old had written a 90-page academic paper on space settlements, and it was really good. Not only was it insightful and the science was good, but somehow he had managed to imbue humor in the writing. Now, I want you to know he's Romanian. English is his second language, and he was able to not only be intelligent and insightful, but also humorous in a 90-page paper about space settlements. You guys, I've never written I write academic papers regularly. I'm an author of children's books, but I've never written a 90-page academic paper in my life. And this kid was astounding. He was in the room. I say to this group, the very first thing I say to the group, after they got themselves back together, is that I don't know about anybody else, but if I was 14 and I was in the room with Jeff Bezos, I would definitely get a selfie. That's what I said. Now, Jeff. So then we do this. I engage with everybody for about 30 minutes or so. People kept on coming in the room. Heads would turn like they're gonna just like jerk off, like just their heads will fall right off because he turned so fast, thinking it was Jeff Bezos at the door, and that was always funny. And then finally, these two guys come in that look like if you made X-Men versions of Jean-Claude Van Damme, like that's these guys. They looked dangerous, and they come in the room. They look sharp, but they didn't look get around. Then the personal assistant comes in, also a formidable human being. And then Jeff Bezos walks in the room. And everybody is just silent. And so I'm at the front of the room, which is now the back of the room, because Jeff Bezos is coming in the back of the room, which is now the front of the room, because everyone's turned around. And he does it like this head nod thing. He looks up and down across the room from right to left, looking at everybody, just taking in the room. And then there I am standing all the way in the back, the front, and just I'm like the other one standing except for the people on the walls, the grown-ups over there. He sees me and he goes, "Oh, hey." And everybody turns and looks at me. And I point at him and I go, "Hey, man." And I want you to know that was the moment that I was granted the power to lift Thor's hammer. Like that's when the Olympian status was granted to me before the amassed Olympians of the National Space Society, that moment. And it was like let's recap. Jeff Bezos said hi to me personally, and I have no idea why. And it was awesome. In response, without missing a beat, I said, "Hey, man." Like we just bump into each other. "Hey, man." But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is this: that after he speaks and he says how excited he is to be in the room, especially with all these 22 award winners. He explained that to everybody. Then he took pictures with everybody. Had a photographer there. Took a group shot, couple group shots, a fun shot. Then left and went out into the main area where there was a social in progress from the ISTC. Like every night they have a social. He went out, walked through that. The students left, all the NSS people left. I'm just leaving the room. I leave the room. I go out there. The place is a buzz. "Oh my God, Jeff Bezos is here. Jeff Bezos is here. Jeff Bezos." I'm like, "Really?" And then I just walk across the room, and he was out there for a while, I guess. I didn't see him again after that. And then I'm on the other side of the room, and that boy David, who wrote the space settlement paper, comes running up to me, and he says, "I took your advice." And he's got his iPhone out in his hand, and he shows me this amazing photo. He had ponied up to Jeff Bezos and asked for a selfie. He had someone take it. It was the most amazing picture of this 14-year-old Romanian future space science professional who had written the winning 90-page space settlement paper, and Jeff Bezos, the wealthiest person in the world, who owns one of the two big private spaceship companies. And I was so honored. I mean, I got to tell you, man, that everything else, as great as the ISDC 2018 in Los Angeles was, that moment when that young person came up to me and showed me that photo, that he's going to go back home and show all his friends and show all his teachers and show all his family. I know that changed the course, that like cemented something for him. And just because when he said, I took your advice, I felt like the best teacher in the entire world. I was so grateful for that opportunity, because you never know, that person might grow up to be like somebody even more amazing than Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk combined. You never know. And so that was my ISDC 2018.
Good story.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Thank you for asking.
Have you ever heard the story about how I'm trying to remember the guy who did the second Cosmos? What's his Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes.
Met Carl Sagan when he was a very young boy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a moment like that.
Yeah. So you know that story, right? You should tell that story.
I don't remember it well enough, except that they.
Well, it was in his series. He actually talked about it.
Yeah.
So then, if anyone's listening,
it was about a book. It was about the book. Which book was it? It was one of Carl Sagan's books. It was Neil deGrasse Tyson was. I don't remember the whole thing, but I remember that he was a young man, and he was invited into Carl Sagan's office or whatever it was, and he ended up getting, I think it was an autograph, a copy of one of the first book or something. I don't know details. That's
not the story. Is that he traveled on a bus to meet him. It poured rain. Carl Sagan picked him up. They went to his house. They hung out for hours. That's the story I heard.
Yeah. And then there was something about Carl Sagan helping him to get home again, and I think they gave him bus fare or money for a phone call or something.
He gave him fare.
It showed that Carl Sagan was, a deeply human person and knew how to treat a child who was interested in cosmology and his related subject area.
I'm just sorry I never met him. He only grew up and went to school like 8 miles from me.
Well, you know how old Neil deGrasse Tyson was when that happened?
No.
He was 17.
Oh, okay.
So, and Carl Sagan and his wife went and picked him up, took him in, talked him up, encouraged him, shared, and exchanged ideas, and then packed him up and made sure he was off safely. Like Nick says, he was a good human.
And Neil deGrasse Tyson went on then to make the successor to Cosmos.
And there you go. And so that's the thing, is that is the impact that we can have as grown-ups on young students. Like, we can say, like, it was amazing. Like, all these people are so a number of the students said to me they've been waiting to hear that their whole life. Grown-ups came up to me and said that they had been looking to hear that when they were kids. And
it can be very powerful to be given permission, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Carl Sagan has a few years on me, or had, but I remember him well.
Nice. Yeah, Carl Sagan had a big impact on my life.
He was the guy when I was young who, well, they said it. I thought that I came up with the phrase. Apparently, they've already said it before I did. That he brought the cosmos and science to the public. Brought it into their brought it into my living room anyway. And amazing. And the guy grew up in Rahway, and I wasn't far. My cousin lived in Rahway.
Did you know of him when you were at that time?
Yeah, I knew about Carl Sagan for a long time, and he made the Cosmos series when I was around 20.
Yeah, I would have had to track him down. The student that I talked with that took the selfie with Jeff Bezos is David Nastace. Nastace. Nastase. And I just want to say that because just in case he becomes the David Nastace.
I'll be reading a paper from him or something.
Well, he got invited to Rick Tomlinson was there, Rocket Rick. And so I once he showed me the paper and I saw how good it was. Well, Rick does that new conference, New World Symposium in Austin every year, and they have a space settlement contest for students. So I introduced Rick and Rick and David, this young man, and then David forwarded his paper to Rick Tomlinson. So this is the whole point of going to ISDC. There are these conferences where people go and they pay money to get autographs from people, like space astronaut fanboy kind of things. And the ISDC is not that at all. The ISDC is people who are dedicated to moving to space, to getting humankind to space, to space exploration, to development of space as a destination and as a. All
right, stop rubbing it in. I'm when I was 14, I was a freaking little dork who didn't know shit about nothing.
Me too.
I still am.
I'm now 59. I just turned 59.
youngster.
I mean, what you're saying, Patrick, is so true. When I was 14, I was a moron. All I did was read comic books. As a 14-year-old, I was like a 10-year-old. Like I wasn't advanced. I wasn't writing. I may have been.
I didn't grow up until I was about 20 when Carl Sagan's Cosmos series came on air. I'm like, oh my God, what have I been missing in my life?
I'm 53, and my adolescence ended when I was 42.
Oh, it ends? I didn't know that.
I'm trying to regain.
Only for a select few. Only for a select few.
I'm glad to be on that team. Yes. Yes, I'm on the other side. I'm a fully functional grown-up now. Fully functional.
Speaking of space colonization.
That sounds terrible.
It's awesome.
Space colonization. What about that dust storm on Mars? Is it still going?
Yeah. As of today, last I checked, it was still going.
Wow, that's a heavy topic.
Well, they might lose opportunity if it keeps going for long enough.
I was about to ask, is Opportunity still alive?
Yes, I believe it is still alive. Yeah.
How many years is it now?
14.
14.
It's a little bit older than my son.
Wow.
He's my youngest, but he's about to head into high school. So
the bass player that you mentioned earlier playing the song. I watched that video that you linked to on Google.
Oh, Death on Two Legs. Yeah. He's becoming quite a good bass player in a short time.
They need to mix the vocals louder, though. It's a common.
Well, that was me recording that, so you know.
But garage bands almost never mix the vocals loud enough because you really have to have the vocals sit on top of everything else for it to sound like a professional.
Yeah, they did the best they could with what.
I'll have to see if I could track down that link.
It's on my channel, but you have to have the link, which I think I did post. But these are teenage musicians. They're learning their craft. But some of them are remarkably talented. And one of the ideas I have, there's a 9-year-old boy who plays guitar remarkably well, and he sings too. And he's just a really talented kid. He's up there with the 13, 14-year-olds.
I often entertain myself watching these YouTube videos about these talented kids. There was this one kid in a music store. He was singing the blues, and he was like, "Whoa."
Yeah, I remember that one. That was he was good. Yeah. Pure talent.
The music store, and I was like, wait, he's like, wait a minute, stop right there. And he got some guy to pick up the guitar and shit, and all of a sudden he started over again.
Yeah, well, when Mozart was 5, he was touring Europe. So
yeah, and there's a great Calvin and Hobbes cartoon when Calvin is reading the back of a Mozart record and said, "I think I was toilet trained at that age."
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he was composing at 4. You know, there is talent out there.
It's amazing out there.
Yeah, and not most of the talent doesn't develop into anything full-fledged, but that's okay. You know, sometimes it's just a good start.
I get so jealous.
Yeah,
it's like, what the hell was I doing at that age?
Well, yeah, most of us were not accomplished in anything, but that's okay. I mean, prodigies there aren't that many Mozarts. Prodigies mostly tend to burn out.
Yeah.
Mozart was
nice
a rare example, one that fell through to adulthood.
It's nice when they stay humble.
No, they don't have to be humble.
There's this new girl a couple of years ago, Grace Vanderwall. She won the America's Got Talent for her ukulele playing, and now she's like doing records and stuff. But she's still this humble little girl, although she's starting to grow up a bit. I think she's 14 now. She was 12 when she did America Got Talent. But
yeah, well, that's good. But at some point you have to say, "Hey, you know what? I got talent, and I've worked hard at this, and I can take it somewhere."
And she got the treehouse guys to build her a treehouse.
That's good.
She's got this amazing treehouse now, like multi trees, multi rooms, and a bridge to go across and everything. They got the treehouse guys, that show.
No, but I like it.
I've seen a little bit of it. It's pretty fun, but pretty ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, but you got them to build her a treehouse complex kind of thing. It's amazing.
Yeah, treehouses are. I mean, you can't watch Lord of the Rings series without looking at the elven tree houses and just saying that would be a great way to live.
Well, apparently this was this kid.
Except where does the sewage go? You know.
Well, this was this kid, like, she always liked the show and everything. And she was, you know, like when she won the thing, she was like, you know, she was crying and stuff. She couldn't believe she won. Like I said, she stayed humble. But when what's his name asked her, "What are you going to do with $1 million?" She was like, a couple interviews later, she was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about building a treehouse or getting a treehouse built." She got the famous guys on TV, the treehouse guys, build it for her.
Well, I think that's excellent. I think that's really good. Couldn't do much better than $1 million.
Well, she's right.
She can't even retire in $1 million anymore. So, you know,
she's making records now.
Good. Yeah.
Have any of you seen the film about Christopher Robin? What, Farewell Christopher Robin, or Goodbye Christopher Robin, or something like that? It's about the Winnie the Pooh books. It's actually a pretty well done movie.
Yeah.
I heard about it. I didn't see it.
Because that boy was the boy who became Christopher Robin. I can't remember his real name. His life was just. He was one of the first people who was transformed by mass celebrity. And, you know, even the story, he didn't write the stories, but the stories were written about him. But he's the one who became the celebrity, and he's the one whose life was just completely screwed up by getting all this fame focused on him at a young age. And at a time when people really didn't know how to manage it. So he was just overwhelmed and, for all practical purposes, destroyed by that thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories about child actors and or
for sure,
celebrities that have gone down the tubes. It's just too many out there. So, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a cliche.
Not
it's a
all
trope.
of them, but
yeah, it's just
quite a few.
Just most of them.
It's just most of them.
Too many.
Kurt
So
Russell.
it's good, you know.
Kurt Russell made it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's
Natalie
enough out there that made
handled it pretty well.
Who?
So when they stay humble,
Ron Howard.
Yeah,
Ron Howard is one of the good ones.
but I think largely by saying that he didn't want to be in front of the camera anymore. He wanted to be behind it. But
He was also one of the ones that stayed humble, and he made it.
yeah, he made some good movies.
Yeah, well, he made the transition to director, as you pointed out. He didn't stay an actor.
Yeah.
No, but he remained humble. I mean, he didn't let it go to his head.
And
like
Will Wheaton has managed his transition away from fame pretty well, I think.
He wasn't all that famous to begin with, I think.
Not in your world, but mine, he was.
But for every one of those, there's 100 Danny Bonaducci's.
Yeah, that's how we were thinking of.
Yeah, from the
to watch
family. And you know, funny, when you're a kid, you watch these kids, or Macaulay Culkin, who's actually kind of a genius. Have you seen his? Like, did you see the AMA that Macaulay Culkin did on Reddit last month? He is one of the funniest people alive. Like the thing he said, what's something that is surprisingly normal about you? And he answered, my penis. And and Reddit went crazy. They're like, that is a really self-effacing, funny, honest answer. And
well, there's some of them that disappear, and then you find out about them later. The Wonder Years. I'm not talking about the guy, the boy, the girl. I forgot her name. She got into math. She became a major mathematician.
Oh, Danica Keller. Is that her name?
Is that her name? I don't even know her name. She was Winnie.
She wrote some books. Yeah.
So there's something kind of like get out of the business of being a celebrity and just do something they wanted to do.
Do something really good, like Shirley Temple.
Well, yeah, she became a senator.
She's amazing.
No, actually, a UN ambassador, but
UN ambassador.
Okay, well, I thought she was a senator at one time.
Yeah,
well, anyway, she went into politics.
Another great film on this theme is Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. If you've never seen that film, it's one of the scariest depictions of mental illness I've ever seen in a movie.
I thought it was a scary movie. I'm like, I immediately get apprehensive just hearing the title.
Yeah, it is. It's scary. It's scary.
Yeah. So speaking of kids, man, like all those kids that are being held by the U.S. government, that is just that makes me sick. That whole thing that's going on with that, I've realized that there is like the number of kids that it is acceptable to happen to for me is a number less than one. Yes, it is a number less than one.
It's disgusting. You know how much, I don't know, maybe you don't know. These guys know how much I hate Trump.
And then, I mean, like politics aside, I don't care about it. Like I don't understand how we as a people, like you can say as humankind, as Americans, whichever way you want to go on that, allow this to happen to children. And it worries me. It worries me in a way that, it changed my mind. It does not worry me. It changed my mind.
When you have a morally bankrupt son of a bitch, scum of the earth, piece of shit for a president, things like this do happen.
40% of the nation support that person.
Yeah, unfortunately.
What did it change your mind from and to?
It changed my mind that we can fix it. It changed my mind. I am now led to believe that America is going to go into a fascist direction, and the best thing we can do is to move. The people that were worried about revolution and being taken over by the government are all the people that have guns and stockpiled weaponry and are now in charge. Just all the stuff that they talked about happening under Obama, they have been perpetuating now. But I never imagined we would get to the place where we have children we warehouse children and then have discussions about it and then evoke philosophical or religious texts and use the exact same pulls that people use to justify Nazism.
Yep.
Here in 2018.
I will say this, Mike. I will say
Patrick,
this.
go ahead. Sorry.
I will say this. I hear you, because I sometimes get in that depressing mode too.
I don't think it's depressing.
But things are going to get better.
I don't think it's depressing.
Well, he's got an awful lot to do with it, because he the guy who incites riots, that's our president now. He incited the assholes of this country.
I'm the guy that incites riots. I'm the guy that incites riots. I do that when things are bad.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I've got years of experience. I'm 53. When times are bad, when people are doing wrong, I'm the guy that is really
kind of riots that are wrong.
I was known for it. And I was the riot that happened in Seattle, I was there.
You mean the Battle for Seattle, 1999?
Yes.
World Trade Organization?
Yes. I was there. I've cooled off. I was like, oh, I figured out a way that it can work out for everybody. If we encourage students to go to space, we can solve all the challenges we face on Earth today. Little did I know that we would get to this place. Well, I never suspected we would get here.
Well, it is bad when our government is separating families at the border and all this other stuff, and not letting them in is one thing, separating them is another.
What were you saying, Nick?
I was just going to say, address a couple of the points you made. You were saying that talking about going into space as a way to solve problems on Earth, and I've noticed that when I speak about the future, that there's a really strong desire that people talk about the future and developments as a blank slate and how we can do better. And that particularly in Monterey last year, 2017, I got some pushback from a couple people in the audience because I didn't portray the future as a blank slate in which we can do better in space than we did on Earth. So I don't
pushback. I remember that.
It was polite. Everybody was very well behaved. They were good questions. I'm not saying they weren't good questions, but there was a pushback against, and so I never held the view that things were going to be better or things would be qualitatively different for human civilization expanded in another direction. And I don't think similarly on Earth, when I see an example of bad leadership or bad policy, it doesn't make me think that, oh, this is the thing that's going to make me lose hope. This is the thing that makes me think that we can't rescue it. But you seem to be saying that this particular instance has made you feel that the U.S. cannot be rescued, and that if there is a hope for the future, it lies elsewhere.
Okay, so I enjoy having this conversation with you because you think through things more thoroughly than I do. And so it is my conjecture now that the U.S. has moved into a fascist direction, that the person who is president cannot be removed. He will not be removed.
Yes, he will. He's not going to make it to the, if he makes it to the end of the term, it'll be a miracle.
Okay, so
I wouldn't consider it miraculous. I certainly think Trump is going to finish his term, and he may get elected a second time, but that's of course unknown.
Okay, so that's what most people say. And so then also considering the support he has, and also that he has entrenched his own people throughout the administration, that it's an interesting thing. I was studying, I've been following Jim Bridenstine and his take take on it being administrator of NASA. He's done, you saw what I wrote about him, and I was against him, and then I'm converted. I'm like, you're doing a surprisingly good job. And nonetheless, if you look in the pictures, you will see in the background is Trump's campaign financial manager.
Well, Mike, you know all these people scratch each other's back. I mean, if you know of a famous person, you can always find them in a photograph with another famous person, or a well-connected person, or a moneyed person. I mean, that's how the world works.
It is, and nonetheless, like I said, that's Trump's campaign financial manager, now in charge of finances at NASA. Okay, so these people are not people that I would sit down to have a beer with or whatever with, a tea, and they are plugged into all these roles, and I used to say they drank the Kool-Aid. That's not these people. They came Kool-Aided. This is their.
Oh, I think he's probably more cynical than that. I think that, you know, if you know about how to fund a major campaign, you probably know something about how to manage. I mean,
yes,
he's not going to make any decisions about NASA policy.
I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about Trump supporters being in positions of authority. All I'm saying is that this person, my proposition is that Donald Trump will not be removed. There's two. I think the way I'm looking at it, and I was kind of running this by Nick because, like I said, his thinking is more thorough than mine. This is something that how I think of it, and so.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, my wife watches MSNBC every night, and they're always talking about ways that Trump can be removed. And frankly, you know, they're grasping at straws.
Right. So the people are grasping at straws because they want it to happen so badly. But, you know, it's an administration. When the administration changes, they'll bring their own people in. This always happens.
So that you don't think there's any chances it's a different thing than that? Because there's
always a chance. Is it a likelihood? No, I would say it's implausible. But you know, there's always a chance that the United States could take an unexpected turn, and you know, the same American population that elected Obama for 2 terms may elect Trump for 2 terms. That's the way it is.
Okay.
You know, I do share Mike's concern that there's like probably in every society there's a little bit of a fascist undercurrent that's just trying to break out as hard as it can. It's never a majority. When Hitler was elected to the, when he was chancellor, it's like 26% of the seats in the Reichstag. He didn't have that. He never won a majority. But as soon as he got into the chancellorship, he solidified his power ruthlessly.
Yes, ruthlessly.
And using street violence or whatever else it took.
Yes.
Yeah, but look at what side is using street violence now. It's Antifa that uses street violence.
That's so minor. There's skirmishes. They're not battles.
Yeah, okay, but the point is
nothing like 1933 in Germany. Yeah.
No.
Nothing like that.
I agree.
Where people were getting killed on a regular basis.
I agree. We are not at that threshold.
Right. And so another thing is like the thing that just happened with North Korea and the United States, to have the North Korean flag and the United States flag on the stage together, bump up against each other, one after the other, and then these two people. This is the nation that our own State Department has as the #1 source of terrorist activity in the world. This person could be charged. Kim Jong-un could be charged with crimes against humanity and is purportedly responsible for hundreds of thousands of deaths, in the very least of which may be Otto Warmbier, who was the young man who stole a poster and got 15 years hard labor in January of 2016. And then a year ago was returned with his legs and arms rearranged, his teeth moved with pliers, deaf, blind, and his brain oxygen starved. Now,
well, there's no question the North Korean regime is a brutal regime. But you may remember when Obama came into office,
yeah,
he said that I will talk with anyone, and he took a real beating for it. And and then he reversed himself, and he did not engage in talks with controversial leaders.
Right.
You know, you make peace with your enemies. You don't make peace with your friends.
Right. So
and the unfortunate reality of that is if we want some kind of civil society that includes even marginal players in the globe, that you have to make some kind of engagement, even with horrific people like Kim Jong-un. I think Kim Jong-un is a horrible person. I think what he's done to North Korea has made 20 million people in North Korea suffer for decades, and with his father and his grandfather before. I mean, there's nothing good to say about Kim Jong-un. But should the U.S. engage with him? Yes. I thought it was great when Obama came into office and said, "I'll talk to anyone." I think we should be talking to Iran. I think we should be talking to the guy in Zimbabwe, Robert Mugabe.
Okay, so that was a year. So I have a different take on that. Because if that boy was my son, and if that boy was my son, Otto Warmbier was my son, and this happened, I would be at the White House throwing fiery bricks right now. No question.
Well, you guys are thoroughly depressing me, so I'm going to say something overly optimistic.
Optimism.
I can't wait for the day to see Donald Trump being taken away in leg irons and a straitjacket, thrown into fucking isolated whatever.
Well,
and then while he's there, being tried for treason. How's that?
Well, that's an emotional response, and
well, yeah, it is. But you guys are provoking my emotions because it's really fucked up what's going on.
I mean, I tell all my close friends now. I explain what I just explained, and I share with them that now is the time to make plans to move. It's not a time to run yet. Run is a dangerous time. This is the time to move, to think about moving, where you'll move to, how you'll do it, what you're going to bring, who you're going to bring, not what, because what is not the important thing, who. Because when it becomes a run time, the run time is very dangerous. And a lot of times you have to make arrangements to get family members out, and you may not.
So what do you see as the best hope for a place for people to go to who have lost hope in the United States?
I don't know about hope. No, I don't know about lost hope. All I'm talking about.
Okay, we'll use another word then.
No, I'm just saying that if the ball continues to roll in the way that it is rolling, then, and it goes this way that I'm proposing, then a lot of people have never even left the country. So they don't know how to move around internationally. So it's time to think about that. Like, I'm in Key West, so it's easy for me to leave the country. It's very easy for me to leave the country. A lot easier than most people.
And marry a boat lift in reverse.
It is. And most people have boats, and there's a nation that's 90 miles away from us. And then another nation that's important is Canada. When the U.S. declared war on Iraq, I requested asylum in Canada, officially.
Did you get it?
No, I was there 2.5 years, and then after they made their decisions, and they said they brought me in, they explained to me very clearly that if I had come into the nation and not requested asylum, that I would have been okay. But by officially requesting asylum, they've never officially granted anyone from the U.S. asylum. And they would create an international incident.
Ah, how interesting. I never knew they'd never granted asylum to anybody from the U.S.
Right. They'll grant them, they'll let them stay, and you can become a citizen, but you're not granted asylum. And so it was the coolest thing, man. I was staying in an apartment in Montreal, and the Canadian SWAT team came. I had roommates and everything. I was there for 2.5 years, you know, and they knock at the door. They come in. I was in the shower. They came to the door. My roommates were like, "Hey, there's some people here to see you. It's the Canadian immigration officers." And then the guys through the door is like, "No rush. We're out here. Everything's cool." And I was like, "Okay, I've been in Canada 2.5 years, and if someone says everything's cool, usually everything is cool." And it was. White or black SUVs look just like regular U.S. SWAT, except no weapons. Picked me up, collected me some belongings, took me to the Immigration Prevention Center, where I stayed for several weeks. That was the place, interestingly enough, that I met the only person I've ever met who was charged with crimes against humanity. It was an African general, and there was definitely a thick aura of evil around him. It was astounding. He had minions, the whole deal. It was shocking.
Inside the detention facility, he had his minions around him?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yes. A lot. He was the grand poobah there. And then I got then after I was there for a few weeks, they took me to the border, which had now transformed. When I went to, it was 2003 when I went to Canada. It was 2005, almost 2006 when I left. And so it had become Homeland Security. And I want you to know that when I saw that the border was now Homeland Security, that's when I first got nervous. I was like, Homeland? And they took me to Homeland Security. Homeland Security received me from the Canadian government, put me in handcuffs, paraded me through the center as if they had caught the guy.
You did the perp walk.
The perp walk. That's what that was.
That's what it's called.
The perp walk. And then I was there for 4 hours. They put me on a bus. They bought me a ticket, and they escorted me all the way down from, I guess that's New York, all the way down back down to Key West. And then once I got here, they just let me go. And then, I'm from here, so like it was no big deal whatsoever. And that happened. That was then. I now know all of that and all that experience. I thought the U.S. was fascistic then. This, where we are today, I never imagined in my life that what is going on is going on. If we store children, we have 10,000 children in warehouses right now. We collected 670 last month. And these are from people seeking asylum. Not just like sneaking over. This is people who are officially seeking asylum. And for all the stuff that's going, and then they have all these job listings to work in child detention centers on Indeed.com. Like, can you imagine going in for that job? Like the kind of people required for that job, make that moral decision, that sort of ethics judgment or decision of ethics. Oh yeah, I can do that. What, $15 an hour, $17 an hour? Yeah, okay. Hey, it's America. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do. That's the argument, I can imagine. I have people. I'm in Key West, and we had a month ago, for no particular reason. No, it was 2 months ago. Some guy came driving down and through the neighborhood playing this weird patriotic music, and the island's only 2 miles by 4 miles. So when anything happens like this, it's like a major deal. And he was pulling a giant billboard that said Trump, and with flags and the whole deal, and like a real spectacle. With one of these like giant F600 or whatever, these giant Fords, brand new one, just driving around with this giant sign that said Trump, not in the back of his truck, on a trailer that he was pulling, this huge thing that he had built with this crazy patriotic music playing. That happened. And everybody here is like, what the what?
But why is that a big deal?
this is Key West, man.
Yeah, but still, I mean, the guy, he's
Did
just
you
expressing his political preference. Why not?
Yeah, have you ever seen anyone do that before in Key West? Anything like that?
Well, I don't spend as much time in Key West as you do, but
Key West is, our official city philosophy is all people are created equal members of one human family. We've passed out 2 million one human family stickers.
Yeah, but does that mean you can't
drive
have free speech in Key West?
Down from Miami carrying a billboard to drive to the neighborhood?
the same state, same country.
I mean, you're echoing, Paul.
I know. I don't know why.
I think what Mike is saying is not that people don't have the right to do that, but that what it is Key West has long been I hear I'm echoing now too. Key West has long been a redoubt for left liberal views, and that to find that kind of expression in the middle of a town that has been so bedrock left would be surprising.
Yeah, which probably gave the guy tremendous pleasure.
Probably.
And
well, listen,
that's why he did it, and your overreaction to it is why he is having some fun doing it.
When Donald Trump came to Key West, this is like mind blowing. Like, why? No one understood, and there was 2 places where he was celebrated at the front of the island, where all the police and the military. We have a base here, and everybody stood in form, like at attention, and then drove through. There was a lot of flags for support, and then there was on the main roads it was the opposite. And then he gets to where he's the base, and the 2 blocks before the base was all supporters, like so many, and they were screaming, "White lives matter, white lives matter." And anybody that wasn't a supporter or was not white was shouted down, was shouted away, was shouted, like even people that were not there to oppose, but they were dark skinned. It is not, that's like, to imagine that in Key West, not in Key West. That's like that in Berkeley.
Yeah.
It's not that extreme, but it's similar.
Well, I mean, bringing supporters in from somewhere else
it's 2 blocks of people.
An old stuff brought in supporters.
I have yesterday I was at a person's house who was like this staunch Catholic and just really into her relationship with Jesus, and like she's very intelligent and she's very passionate about Jesus. This is her thing. And she has Fox on all the time, and then I mentioned this thing about the kids, and she's like, "That's wrong. We have to protect ourselves. We can't have people just coming to the country." And I'm thinking, holy smokes, this woman's whole life is about Christ and about compassion. And for her to say that, what? Like, there's a book, it's called the Bible. And if you get to the crux of it, there's this guy named Jesus in it. And he says, the most important thing is to love your neighbor as yourself. That everything else in the book hangs on this truth. That's it. Like everything else, if you want to study it, but that's the Cliff Note version.
Well, now you don't have to ever ask me ever again, why am I an atheist?
So, so like there's jerks on both sides of everything. But anyway, if you claim to be this one thing, you should be looking out for people. And in particular, you have to look out for kids. And in this country, when you have a president getting up in front of saying in front of people and saying that he could pardon himself if he wanted to, that other people saying that he could shoot James Comey in the office and pardon himself and it would be okay. Well, when I was growing up, we had this great thing, this terrific idea called checks and balances. It was amazing. So there's these 3, there's executive, judicial, legislative, and they all make sure that everybody's on the up and up. But suddenly here in 2018, none of that matters.
That's what's going on. That's what Trump is doing. And if you watch MSNBC, if you watch MSNBC, you can hear what they're saying. Trump is doing everything that what do you call it? To circumvent the things that were put in place. He's trying to become King Trump. This is what he's doing.
Yeah, this is the talking point, but it's just because people are upset because, as Mike was saying earlier, Trump is putting his own people in every position he can, which is what every president always does. The people on the other side would say to you, well, that look, there's these FBI agents saying we're not even going to let him get into office. I mean, obviously, the law enforcement branch is already set up against him. And if you've already politicized your political system to that point, there are going to be consequences, and the chickens are going to come home to roost.
That was one person.
I don't care what the politics
it was
are.
One comment and one person. That's not a conspiracy.
What I'm talking about is the moral standards that have been pissed on. Okay, and yes, I'm an atheist who has a moral standard. That's right. That's what I am, and that's why I called Trump the morally bankrupt piece of shit that he is.
Well, I mean, like that's not like, I'm not arguing right or wrong here. I'm just saying that all of the cues and earmarks say to me that, okay, so I was before in opposition to what is going on. Now I think that opposition and resistance is merely a delay tactic to help get people out.
So where should they go?
Where are you going, Mike?
I can go anywhere. I got places all over. I traveled a lot before I became an astronaut teacher. I traveled all over the place. So I got friends everywhere. Thank God. Praise good. Hallelujah. Praise Google. And
I wouldn't praise Google.
so whoever pick it up. Pick which one's good for you. So it's not me. It's
Bob Dubs for me.
So you're asking me hypothetically where I would go? I love the tropics, man.
It's not hypothetical. I'm asking you where you're leaving now.
Oh, I'm not leaving right now. I got to get a whole bunch of people out of here, Paul.
Oh, they can handle it themselves. You don't have to do it for
people
them.
don't even know how to do this. No, it's a whole new brand new idea for Americans. This is not a usual situation thing. And so,
I agree with Mike. A lot of people are unfamiliar with travel, and most Americans
don't have passports.
Actually, that's changed a lot just in the last 20 years. It used to be like only 10% of people had passports, but now it's jumped to like almost 47% or something like that.
Really?
Because you have to get.
I always thought that was like a de rigueur thing. You had to have, of course, when I married my wife, she didn't have a passport. She has one now, but only because we went like to the Bahamas.
I had one when I was like 12.
Yeah. Well, but at age, you have to renew it,
Yeah, well, everybody should always be ready with a bug out bag and cash and a passport. And be prepared.
Kinda. Ever since I was in the Army, I've always been ready like that, but not in the way that I see other people ready. Like, I'm ready for when they come. I'm going to fight. That's not my gig. So if it's funny, when I got married, I told my wife, I said, here's the thing. There's no such thing as zombies. Yet, if zombies show up, all bets are off. That's the rules. That's how it flies. There's no such thing as zombies. Nonetheless, if zombies show up, all bets are off.
Well, it's good that you're an astronaut teacher, because the people who are going to leave this planet and colonize space are not going to be the asswipe neo-Nazi flat earthing pieces of shit that actually live here that are voting for Trump. So.
Well, actually, where you'll find people on the far right are quite in support of space travel and space exploration.
Why do you have to go rain on my parade?
sorry.
Nick, what you're saying is right. A lot of people who call themselves libertarian
right.
are work in the space industry. I would say that the number one political party in the space industry is libertarian.
That's not far right.
Yeah, that's not. But you have to make distinctions between.
It's not.
Libertarians hate fascists.
Libertarian is right, man. Libertarian is right.
Yeah, well, this is the tendency that's become increasingly prevalent since Trump became president. Is you take everybody, you put them under this huge umbrella and act like they agree where they don't, because the libertarians hate the skeptics, hate the alt-right, hate the tradcons. They all hate each other, but they are all definitely different than the far left, but they don't belong under the same umbrella.
Agreed.
Shouldn't be tarred with the same brush. By the way, Mike.
I mean, like, listen, Paul, a lot of people, like, listen, everybody who calls themselves libertarians, that's like everybody who calls themselves atheist is a good example, or calls themselves, it's not a brush that you can say, like, the variety of people who call themselves libertarians is ridiculous. And yet they all call themselves libertarians. And nonetheless, there's a ton of people who are just far right people who are libertarians also. And there's a ton of
there's
no, I disagree with that.
There is.
I don't think that's accurate at all.
I'm not talking about hypothetics. I'm talking about
not hypothetical. It's not accurate. It's not accurate. Far right people want powerful central government. Libertarians don't.
Okay, did I mention the contentious nature of libertarians? That's like
well, I don't see what that means.
The libertarians who take a strong stand on I guess they call it the non-intervention principle. You know, they're a different brand than the right-leaning libertarians, and there are enough people who associate themselves with libertarianism that there are left libertarians and right libertarians.
Well, but I mean, they're both contradictory, right?
It all sounds like a bunch of labels to me.
Well, right. I don't think any of it makes any sense.
Hold on, you guys. I'm sending you guys a link. I don't know how this works on a podcast when I send somebody.
Just paste it into the chat.
I know how to send it, but I don't know how to communicate. This is on Reddit the other day. It's hilarious.
Libertarian meme comment. Okay.
So it's if you're going to Reddit, it's under libertarian meme, the subreddit libertarian meme, which is a very funny place to be. And it's one called natural enemies.
If I click on this, am I going to be pulled out of this hangout?
No, I clicked on it, but my computer is so slow it still hasn't loaded it.
Yeah.
I've got some kind of problem today with my computer.
Well, it's not loading for me either. So, oh no, there it is.
I'm being redirected to Reddit.
So Reddit.
That's what it should do.
It's a website.
It should take you to Reddit. Yeah.
Did you just say Reddit is a website? Yes, it is.
Front page of the internet.
Amen. There you go. So it's the principle from Simpsons, and it's the garrulous Scottish farmer, and it says,
"Oh yeah, that's the custodian at the elementary school."
Yeah, the custodian, right? Brothers and sisters are natural enemies, like progressives and libertarians, or communists and libertarians, or ANCAPs and libertarians, or libertarians and other libertarians. They've ruined libertarianism.
Well, ANCAPs and libertarians usually get along.
You libertarians sure are contentious people. You just made an enemy for life. And that is the reason that's funny is just the truth that is found there. And while libertarian can be a fine idea, a lot of the people that have embraced the idea and self-identify as libertarians are Trump supporters.
Actually, I think
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true either.
Actually, I think the meme is more of a joke about the word libertarian because nobody knows what it is anymore.
Exactly.
Well, it used to be everybody who'd read Hayek and was impressed by it. I think that pretty much is still the same case.
So
the road to serfdom.
You all are well too versed in libertarianism, particularly Paul and Nick. But
has moral standards
people who identify as libertarians do not have the thinking on the subject that you do. Either of you.
I am a human being that has a much higher moral standard than anybody who's ever supported Trump.
You're also very humble. You're also very humble.
I understand, Patrick. That comes across as a bit. What's the word I'm looking for?
Sarcastic, arrogant.
I'm not supporting Trump. I want to put clear. I am anti-Trump, but I have been since way before he was a candidate for president. But
I'm being sarcastically arrogant.
If you try to make yourself superior to people, that's a sure way to make them hate you and attack your positions.
I know that. I was being
the tribalism is the problem here. I think
was being sarcastically arrogant. It was a joke.
Okay, but
Or
you got to give me a little more of the sarcastic spin on it. Okay.
I'm gonna create a subreddit right now, sarcasticarrogance.com. No, just sarcastic arrogance. It's gonna be subreddits. Yeah, sarcastic arrogance.
Well, I mean that, sarcastic. There's arrogance, which is
I didn't know he was
much more common.
He was being arrogant.
Well, some people are good at sarcasm.
I didn't know he's being sarcastic. I thought he was just being arrogant.
Some people are very good at sarcasm, just like some people are good at telling jokes, and some people aren't. I learned that I had better not tell any jokes because they all go over like a lead balloon.
Well, thanks for your confidence.
That's because of the cliches.
People are really good at sarcasm, and then there's Patrick.
Thanks for all your votes of confidence. Anyway, I'll be right back.
By the way, this is a pub, so cheers. Yeah, I mean, I just want to point out that something I've been saying for years now is that the tribalism is a big part of the problem. As soon as you drive people in one tribe or another,
mm-hmm.
all rational discourse is off, and that we're seeing that now in an extreme case. People are flocking to supporting Trump, not because they have any kind of coherent position on the issues, but because they feel that that's their tribe, that's their gang, and Trump is their gang leader, and it doesn't matter what the arguments are; they're not interested in arguments. And if you want to break that, and I think you do, I know I do. Stop treating them like members of the opposite gang and treat them like people. And, and stop labeling them.
Or else what?
Or else they will continue to support him no matter what kind of bullshit he comes up with.
Okay, so one of the organizations I work with, one of the members has become radicalized, and I'm on the other side of we're polar opposite to me because I'm a liberal. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. No.
So what is the character of this individual's radicalization? What is they can become converted to?
Alt-right.
So
okay.
Like a white supremacist sort of position?
No, alt-right is not white supremacist.
Okay, but so this person's positions are that men are subjugated, and white men in particular. Okay.
Okay.
And so I'm in this organization, and then I'm like, okay, so this is crazy talk. And at one point, it was this person said that women have never been oppressed. In fact, it's only been men who have been oppressed. And just that's insane talk. And
I kind of know where you're coming from, Mike. I mean, I remember once I was in a bar in Princeton, New Jersey, which is a pretty left-leaning place.
Yep.
And a guy came up to me, a young guy, a guy with good grooming and good manners.
Yeah.
And after we chatted for a while, he started trying to recruit me into sort of like this extreme position, right-wing position. And as someone who's a great lover of what African Americans have done in this country and accomplished, I was appalled. And I didn't agree with him at all. So my visceral reaction was, just reject everything this guy says. And I did. I rejected everything he said. And he went on to find some other candidate for recruitment. But, that is, when I think back on that, I think maybe, this guy was an extreme case. He was totally in the tank for the extreme right, but he was that's the kind of thing that can happen, and the response is intuitively, this is crazy. I want nothing to do with it. And maybe that in some cases, that is the right response. But other times it's better to say, hey, let's break this down. Let's unpack this. Where does it come from? You know,
but a lot of people don't have what it takes to do that, because you have to have a very strong stomach to be able to listen to somebody else's arguments and look at somebody else's evidence in a way that puts you in a position of discomfiture.
That's right.
And you have to have enough historical knowledge to understand.
Now, so what Nick just said is exactly the case. So then I did that. I went into that place and I just said, okay, so look, let's just take this from a whole different angle. If we can work this out, then we can make, like, if we can work this out, this thing right here, then the world, there's hope for everybody. We can do this. And then I acknowledged all his positions and I said that, you can call me these things. You can say these things about my ideas. We can move from this. We can move in any direction you want to go in and discuss these things and figure it out. And then it was explained that I am a dangerous person, that my ideas are dangerous and that I'm subverting society. And I was like that is, I said, so is there any room for discussion on these points? No, as long as you acknowledge that that's the case, that you are indeed.
Well, I mean, that is fascism. When people are dangerous because of their points of view, then that becomes, that's fascism.
Well, you can find anti-fascists who hold exactly that same view.
Jerks are jerks. Jerks are jerks. Look,
I agree with Mike on that. Jerks are jerks, and there are jerks left, right, and center.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about left or right. There are left fascists.
I mean, okay. So what happened after that, though, was that the person in charge of the organization who was present for this meeting said, "Look, talking later. I'm tired of this right-left thing. You guys are just have different opinions about, like, opposite opinions about the same thing, and I'm just tired of it, and I just want to work on science." Well, I don't think I think that I explained that when Werner von Braun was working on rocket science in Nazi Germany, and then the U.S. implemented Project Paperclip and gave him the opportunity, and him and 16 other scientists and engineers and thinkers, to leave and work on what they wanted to in a setting, that they took advantage of that. And the thing is that most people just want to do what we want to do. Most people don't want to fight good or evil. They just want to live their lives, have food, do their life work. And then there comes these times where we have to make decisions. There do come these times where we have to make another decision. That if we do our life work without making the decision, then we lose our soul in a way. We abandon any sense of moral compass. And this is my contention right now, is that it's great to want to do science and work on exclusively on space, and it'll make the world a better place. Ordinarily, this is not one of those times. And so that's why I can't work with that individual. I'm not willing to concede that just because our opinions are on polar opposite sides of a belief system, that person's beliefs are of equal value to mine, because my beliefs are inclusion, equality, and equity and sustainability, and this other person's beliefs are that specifically that the cream rises to the top. And there's a reason why people who are men and white are in charge, like, quote unquote. And that's anathema to me. It's not how I see anything working in biology. It's not how I see things working sociologically. and it's not the world that I want to work towards.
In other words, to bring back my sarcastic arrogance, you have a much higher moral standard than any Trump supporter or Trump himself.
I'm not making that contention. I just had,
You know, I know that's sarcastically arrogant, but that's really what it's about. It's if you're going to work towards something like you said, you want to work in science, you have to make a decision. If you're doing it for a bad, or shall I say evil entity, you're not making the right decision. And
Yeah,
that's a moral thinking.
Many of the people who hold the views that Mike was attributing to the fellow he was working with in this organization are not Trump supporters. I mean, if you listen carefully to what the alt-right says, you know, they view Trump as an opportunistic candidate, but they don't support him. They criticize him on a great many things. They'll go with him as far as they'll go, but they do not agree ideologically with him. Well, Trump doesn't represent anything ideologically anyway, so that's
right, because that's all about money.
Well, no, it's about those who respond, you know, to his particular style and his charisma. No, I mean, I know many people don't respond to it, but
Nick,
for those
thing is all about money.
It's the tribalism.
For him, it's all about money.
Trump wants to be the tribal leader of everything.
Yeah, no, he's got plenty of money. I don't think that's what he's after.
That's completely arguable, Paul.
I think what he's after is power and attention. That's what he
I agree with Paul. It's primarily about power and attention. But if you read the accounts of his staff people during the campaign, they didn't even expect to win. I mean, they were taken fucking by surprise when they won.
Absolutely.
And they had no transition team in place or anything. So there were even people in the administration who said, you know, it doesn't really matter what we do now because we're not going to win anyway, so nobody's going to look into it. So it's you know, it was partly an accidental candidacy, partly the fact that people were ready to vote against, you know, entrenched political influence, what they felt that Hillary Clinton represented.
Well said.
So,
well said.
Trump doesn't really have an ideology. Trump is Trump, and as a political leader, I will observe that as a political leader, Trump is at his best when he is just Trump and not when he's LARPing as a trad cuck. So, yes, he's got the trad cons behind him. He's got the evangelicals who are willing to vote for him. He's got 87% of the Republican base in a recent poll said that they were on his side. And he's a symbol for them, but he's not an ideology. There is no Trumpism, if you will.
Well, I don't think he's capable of ideology.
Yeah, but his people who are working for him could formulate one. But
I'm sure they could.
It would be ex post facto. But he's staffed his entire administration with, you know, hardcore trad cons like Mike Pence. So he's, as Richard Spencer puts it, they're just enacting the agenda of the heritage.
Or neocons like Mike Bolton, but
yeah, or neocons like Mike Bolton. Good point. The neocons have a presence as well as the trad cons.
In which they're just using Trump to get what they want.
Right.
Which is, you know, a more Pax Americana stance.
Yeah, exactly. But they can't sway the people in the way that Trump can sway the people. So Trump has that Trump card, as it were, of being able to sway a significant majority of the people, well, enough people to get policies passed. But the trad cons and the neocons do not have that kind of charisma, and they do not have that power. So they have to use him to get what they want.
Yes, but who's using who?
That's a good question. They're both using each other.
Well, right, yeah, and that's
excuse me, Mr. Writer. Isn't that
often
who's
confused.
using whom?
Yes, you're right. It should be who's using whom.
Who is using whom?
Oh, you're awesome. I'm sorry.
It's the object.
I'm sorry, Mike. I couldn't resist. You being a writer and all that, you know.
That's why God created editors. Believe it.
I correct minor grammatical errors. I am awesome. Yes,
I couldn't resist the joke. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, I think that this was, well, if you go back to 1933, the people who were the kingmakers in Germany at the time thought they were using Hitler.
Yes, they did.
And
right.
and he's gonna be our populist coalition leader, and we're gonna control him.
But Hitler actually did come into office with an agenda and an ideology which he'd already laid out in Mein Kampf.
Oh yeah, and in fact, yeah, he'd already told everybody what he was going to do, and he did it. There was no secrets, and that now Trump has nothing like that. I will grant you.
Well, his campaign was saying that he was going to do all these things.
Well, no,
not that he actually did them, but that's how he got his.
I mean, he never went. I mean, build.
That's how he accumulated his.
That's not an ideology. That's just a stupid idea.
No,
but that's called campaigning, Patrick. You probably
no, but that's the problem. That's the worries of the people who are not like me, but the people who are worried about Trump being this Hitler. The ones who have actually said that is because there are sort of similarities in the behavior, but that doesn't mean he is actually doing the same thing. It's just that there are.
Well, the analogy is. I just want to point out that that there are historical precedents for people thinking they're using X and X is using them.
Yes.
And there's probably lots of others. I just can't think of one at the moment.
and analogies are cheap to come by. We had 8 years of analogy under Obama. I'm sure you haven't forgotten that.
Oh yeah.
Analogies are a dime a dozen, right?
I mean, well, gosh, I mean, 24-hour cable news. There's people have nothing to do but come up with analogies.
Yesterday, a guy walked up on everybody knows my positions here on the island, and surprisingly, there's plenty of Trump supporters. So people will come up and take the opportunity and tell me what they think. And yesterday, someone walked up to me just out of nowhere while I was out picking mangoes and said, I got to stop and bust and what he said. And he said, I want you to know that Donald Trump is going to go down as one of the great ones. And I said, I absolutely agree. Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Trump, no question.
Paul was mentioning before about
because we make all these comparisons to Hitler, but remember, there's a plenty of other dictators and people that go in these directions. It doesn't have to be the one, and they all are original their own ways.
Well, isn't it Godwin's law that the first person who mentions Hitler loses?
Paul was mentioning before about when we meet somebody who has this totally opposite thing, and you just rubs you the wrong way. You have a total, like you are appalled at the ideas, and your knee-jerk reaction is to immediately disagree with everything he said. That's what happened to me with Trump. Now, I got to tell you that Trump did one or two things that I thought I might actually agree with, and yet, it's his from the beginning. Even from the beginning of his campaign, I smelled a rat, and the fact that he just proved himself to be the morally bankrupt person that he is. I'm going to continue to just reject everything he says and does, because almost everything he says is a lie anyway. But I'm sure somewhere in there was a truth being told, or by him, or something he did that might have actually worked.
But Patrick, that's the road to electoral defeat. Because if your only position is rejectionism and you have nothing positive to ask people,
I'm just reflecting what Paul said before. It is a human thing to reject everything this person says or does, because you can't stand him.
It's okay to reject Trump. I mean, Trump only has one vote, right? But it's hating on the supporters that is the self-defeating thing.
Well, if hating on their supporters is self-defeating, but hating on their symbol is equally self-defeating. You're much better off avoiding Trump entirely and engaging the people on the issues if they're willing to engage. Mike was just saying that this guy in his organization was not willing to engage in an exchange. And when you hit a brick wall like that, whether your brick wall is on the left or right, it doesn't really matter. But you have to find the people who are willing to engage in a conversation, and then try to find some hard-won common ground with them if you want to make any kind of progress at all.
Well, yeah, I agree. It's just that when I talk about Trump supporters, I admit that I'm guilty of putting the supporters under one umbrella, which is not technically accurate, and I shouldn't be doing that. But
that's right. Divide and conquer if you want to.
Yeah, I can't help myself, because most of the supporters that I'm talking about are those neo-Nazis carrying tiki torches, talking.
No, that's a tiny number.
I know, but that's the way I see Trump supporters, and I'm guilty. I admit that I'm guilty of seeing all Trump supporters as those kind of people, but I'm sure that's not really true.
It's the guy with the Ford F-150 who works hard to feed his family, has no violent intentions against anybody, who is won over by the rhetoric of the anti-immigration.
Problem is, Paul, is that those people turn into the best Nazis, not the famous Nazis, just the regular, ordinary Nazis. It's the people that are working for 1750. It's the people working for 1750 an hour at the child detention center. It is that's the challenge right there. Is it now? I agree with. Like for me, the qualification of a person who is a Trump supporter is this: would you stand up to wrong? That's it. I mean, like Trump and the whole whatever movement is taking place or non-movement or whatever it is a show, and that doesn't have a personal connection with all of us. It's the show that's in front of us that we engage with. For me, I have a lot of friends, even here in Key West, who are Trump supporters. And I have to gauge them quietly to myself at what decision would this person make when faced with a moral dilemma. That's the challenge.
Right.
And like I was at a coffee shop and a guy walks up to, there's a guy who's well known in this community. This has happened a lot. And if this is happening in Key West, goodness, this guy, and I engage with people in the exact same way in Key West as I do in these other settings where I'm a space science professional. So it can be larger than life. But a person walks up to me who's well known in the community, and we're talking about Trump, and I say that this thing is happening. Do you still support him? And he says in front of everybody at the coffee shop, Donald Trump could walk up to you right now, shoot you in the head, and he puts his hand to my head with 2 fingers and kill you, and I'm still going to support Donald Trump. And he said it just like that.
Well, that really sucks.
It just is what it is. But these are the things that I don't pay attention to, like catch on. I just they accumulate, and then I have to make a decision later.
Well, you know what, Mike? If somebody put their 2 fingers to my head and said that to me, I'd have to first gauge how good of a friend they are of mine, and then make sure if it wasn't a joke. And secondly, if it wasn't a joke, I'd probably throw my coffee in his face and leave.
Right. So like this is a person 2 weeks later who says that they love me in front of everybody. Like, I love you, Mike.
It's a meme. It's a meme. And this is why the right has become powerful, is because, as everybody knows, the left can't meme. Okay. That thing of the guy putting his finger to your head, that's almost a direct quote from Trump himself, who said, I could stand in the middle of the street and shoot a gun
somebody in the face,
and I would still have my supporters.
Yeah.
So it's a meme. And you have to understand it as a meme. It's symbolically communicating an idea.
And the left can definitely meme. My God, are you kidding me?
Well, sometimes, but they're not nearly.
The right is nowhere near as funny as the left. Oh my God.
Well, I have to disagree with you on that. I get
all the famous right comedians, please. Right-wing Hollywood.
Well, yeah. Well, obviously the right wing has no place in Hollywood. Well, at least since the end of the
all the right-wing comedy specials. I have to throw that one back at you, Nick. I did it.
Right. Well, memeing is an art unto itself, and it's different from television and film.
You're right.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with HBO.
Right. And it changed conditions where people on the right took positions of power in media and in entertainment. You would have right-wing shows on television, but we don't have them now because the people in control of television and cinema are all on the far left.
Yeah, well, let's get Mike Bowler, and I want to ask him about.
Wait, is he here? Wait, you've been here the whole. Mike, did he just show up?
No,
I've been here all the time.
He was the first one here.
But he hasn't said anything the entire time.
I want to ask him about the relationship between our favorite conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, but
Alex
he's
Jones,
my favorite podcast.
and Trump.
Wow.
Has that soured?
No, but I'm working. I'm doing some research on this because there's something fishy with Jones and his love of Trump.
Okay, hold on. Before Mike gets started, I want you to say, like, we've been here for over an hour and you haven't said anything. You're the best podcast host ever. You're just like that.
Oh, well, he's in the top 5, maybe. But
that was awesome. If I wish we'd all be that good a listener.
I have this thing. When smart people talk, I want to listen to them. Okay.
But what about us?
Exactly.
Well,
like, must have been Nick you're talking about.
Yeah, Nick. Yeah, it was Nick.
I don't think it was me.
And Patrick. No. Getting back, talking about Alex Jones, the guy is confusing the shit out of me, to be honest.
That's it. That's what he's good at.
Well, yeah. Well, he's in love with Trump, and Trump's in love with him. They seem to be.
I thought they kind of split up over some issue. I can't remember.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. The issue was when Trump ordered the bombing of Syria over the chemical attack, and Jones kind of went the other way, and I'm like, wait a minute, that is according to, way Jones has talked all this time has been that Trump can do no wrong. He's kicking out the immigrants. He's kicking out, or he's now putting these, the tariffs. He's been, he's fighting the globalists. That seems to be his stick. But then this bombing, and it's starting to, I'm beginning to wonder how much, because see, Jones also has some ties to Russia. RT, he's done a number of shows and interviews with those people, and there might be I'm beginning to wonder if Jones isn't a Russian agent, or at least somebody on the payroll of the the Russians trying to part of this manipulating the elections and stuff like that. Because, like I said, everything when Trump, he's put they're talking, what was it, 25% tariffs on stuff from China, and they're going to start putting stuff on Canada and Mexico, and that was great. He's, according to Jones, that's great. He's fighting the globalists. He's fighting the elites. Of course, the globalists are another word for Illuminati, and that type of stuff. That when you get into the real conspiracy side. So when he seems to be very
the Twilight Zone just freaking opened up, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's just like, all right. Just was wondering if there's supposed to be theme music playing or something.
Oh.
I could find some if you want.
Yeah, but it's that's what I'm kind of wondering about now. Is I don't have any real solid evidence for this, but definitely, but the stuff I've been covering on my show, there's a lot of stuff about this attack on the globalists, and this really he's attacking free trade. He used to be totally opposed to free trade, or at least Jones is, and Trump is. I don't think he understands what he's, what forces he's unleashing. So that's kind of where I think Jones is kind of sitting, because he's still he does this crazy shit. Actually, I was trying to look to see if I got any stories about him this week. This might be the first week I don't have a story about him.
Don't you think that Jones' history as a vitamin salesman pretty much puts him in the camp of people who are doing something to earn money rather than having any sincere beliefs about what he talks about?
You mean camp? And you mean tribe?
Yeah.
No, I think
I don't know.
didn't he recently in his divorce proceedings claim that he was a performance artist and he
Yeah,
didn't really
Yeah,
mean
yeah.
any of it?
Yeah, that's it. That's his thing. He's a performance artist, but he's always had ties to some type of money making operation. When he got
Well, like
started,
selling vitamins.
Or
well,
yeah, well,
Prevail
I've
by
heard
now.
some of Alex Jones ads, and he sells much more fringe things than that. I mean,
well, yeah, but he was tied in with this Ted Anderson with his show's syndicated on this Genesis network, and Ted Anderson ran, or he did run, a gold trading, and apparently he was doing it unlicensed, so he got into trouble for that, and that's when he kind of started transitioning into selling vitamins. So he's always had that money thing, but I'm again. I was talking on I was interviewed on a podcast, Beyond the Trailer Park, Atheists Online,
It was a
and
podcast just like this.
just like this. And I was mentioning that when Alex Jones gets drunk, you start getting more and more of what he really believes. Because he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he clearly, I mean, I think even in the show he says like, I've only been drinking, there was a big bottle of Jack Daniels sitting there, so he's
doesn't
hammering
even
down.
drink good booze, just Jack.
Yeah, there's Jack Daniels, and apparently they've been during the breaks they were smoking marijuana, so he doesn't admit to smoking, but I'm sure he was getting a contact high. But he started talking about that the reptilians, or these space aliens from the fourth or fifth dimension, travel. That's how they enter the our dimension, and then they inhabit people, or they inhabit humans, so they can function within our dimension. And this was on on Rogan's podcast. So I'm kind of, and he's there, when he's not drunk, or maybe not as drunk, sometimes you'll start hearing this stuff about dimensional, because he's like, scientists have proven this. We live in a multiverse, multidimensional world, and that's how these creatures they exist in the fifth dimension, and they travel and they inhabit bodies in the third dimension, all proven by science. And that's when I started laughing and started writing, because it's all this, he started talking about Bigfoot and all the other stuff that goes along with it. But, so he believes in something, and he does definitely, there is a religious undertone to his stuff. He used to be really good at not talking religion, but I think Trump, and this is what I think, what he has done is to embolden the lunatic fringe in this country, that it wasn't cool to believe in a conspiracy, but now we got the conspiracy president that has emboldened people to start speaking up and saying, yeah, I believe that, aliens crashed at Roswell, and there was a shooter on the grassy knoll, or whatever. It kind of emboldened these people. That's what it seems to be, at least in my opinion. And it just seemed like many of these conspiracies that were not really, I don't know, that was kind of underground. I mean, the flat Earth. conspiracy has always been around, but now that we got a president who is challenging the status quo, it's now allows the lunatic fringe giving them some credibility. That's what I think was happening. That he's yeah.
So, okay, bottom line, Allie and Donnie are still going steady. No?
I don't know.
Well, there's going to be some when you. I agree with almost everything Mike Bowler just said. I do think that Trump's willingness to question things in public has brought these people out of the woodwork, and that they are more ready to speak up.
Go ahead.
And even willing to say things in public that previously were only said in private. That being said, the Alex Jones conspiracies tend to be, like reptilian shit. That stuff is so out there that cannot be the basis of a coherent political program. And as confused as the Trump administration is, it knows, the people who are working in it knows they have to have a coherent political program, and they can't stand up in front of a bunch of reporters and talking about reptilians.
I don't know about coherent, though. I mean,
well, somewhat coherent.
Yeah.
Being able to pull off a summit, that's a coherent exercise.
My coherency standards are maybe a little higher than Donnie's.
Higher than mine, apparently.
You know what, Nick, though, you know what disturbs me the most about those, like you said, it's absolutely bizarre, reptilian stuff. It's all bizarre. What troubles me is the number of people who are getting on the board that fantasy shit. It's troubling me because, when we first started doing these podcasts with Paul, especially the pubs, we were talking about the stupidity of Americans and the lack of education and all that stuff. This is what's troubling me. It's these people that are getting on board of the stupidity train.
Well, Mike was saying earlier that I forgot the line I was going to quote, but he was talking about the pseudoscience. He was talking about how Alex Jones was saying, this has all been proven by science. I think that with the increase of science as something that's essential to our civilization, that we're not going to see less pseudoscience, we're going to see more pseudoscience, because people on the fringes know that if they want to make their case, they have to sound like science. And so they'll go actually read some science books, and they'll throw in some language, and they'll try to make things sound plausible. So I think we should expect to see, the more effective science is and the more it affects social institutions, I think we should expect to see more and more pseudoscience consciously, purposefully dressing itself up as science. I've heard people on the pseudoscientific fringe talk about real science as junk science, because scientists for a long time would dismiss pseudoscience as junk science. Well, now the pseudoscience people picked up on that. They say, well, we can throw that as an insult too. We can call the real scientists junk scientists and get away with it. I mean, who's going to hold their feet to the fire? No one.
It's a back and forth thing. It's insane.
Right.
Even in the beginning of the, I don't remember the site. It was actually in Neil deGrasse Tyson's version of Cosmos about the ancient scientists. There was one guy who was the pseudoscientist trying to argue against the real scientist. I don't remember the whole story, but it had to do with electricity, and chemistry. But it was around for a long time, and it's never going to go away. The stupid people are going to just continue to be.
Well, you get even clever pseudoscience, right? I mean, you get.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It adds fuel to the fire. The success.
I deal with people every day who know how to sound like they're very clever and well informed, and even have advanced degrees in science, and yet are spouting nonsense. It's. In my job, I don't have to deal with that, because here, that's pretty tight and coherent, but there are folks out there who are saying things that sound very scientific. They have the white coats, they have the PhDs, and they're obviously wrong, but a lot of people think, oh, well, white coat, PhD must be true. Right. And it reminds me, you remember that Heinlein movie? Well, it wasn't a Heinlein movie, but it's a movie of a Heinlein novel way back in the 50s or something, where they show this mechanical computer turning away on a calculation, levers and rods moving around, and the scientist says something, I can make some pronouncement, and the press says, "Professor, could you be wrong?" And professor says, "I could be wrong, but the computer can't be wrong." And you know, that's we all laugh at that, but you know, just the trappings of science convince people more than the science itself. And it's something that you have to pay close attention to. And you know, not everybody who is promoting pseudoscience is stupid.
Well, that comes down to a morality of the kind of person you are. I mean, there are scientists out there who could care less about anybody, and they just want to do for themselves, and they'll
well
a paper just to make their own celebrity or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. And then you've got scientists out there that are morally standing on 2 feet and don't play that game. You know?
Well, there are a lot of perverse incentives. By the way, if you listen to the Nature podcast, you know what I'm talking about. Perverse incentives for people who, you know, good scientists who want to do good work, but they're driven away from that by the perverse incentives in the science industry to fudge the data. That's more fake science than pseudoscience, but you know, it's out there. It's quite insidious.
Yeah,
and you have a lot of examples of people publishing overtly fake stuff. And these are not stupid people. These are not people, uncredentialed people. These are people who have all the training.
Right.
And they, you know, people, the recent, some of the recent stem cell controversies come to mind right away. Right.
That's where I'm coming from. In other words, it's a morality stance. You know, there are people out there with degrees and know what they're doing that have a lesser moral.
Well, but it's not only that. There are some people who don't know what they're doing. I mean, they're sincerely deluded.
Yeah. Those are the fish in the barrel, though, right? I mean,
well, let's use me as an example. I'm no scientist. I'm a science enthusiast, right? So I don't have any degrees and I don't understand half the shit that comes out. But I try to hone my bullshit detector, you know, to a point at least, you know, where if I hear some bullshit, I'm going to say, wait, that doesn't sound right. Let me look that up, kind of thing. But you know, there are people out there that know more than me that laugh at me. Like, ha ha ha, you don't have a degree. What the fuck are you talking about? I don't give a shit. You know, they're gonna be that. Then, you know what I'm saying? You have the Neil deGrasse Tysons who are morally standing on their more than 2 feet and understand the realities and don't try to bullshit anybody. And then you have the, oh, I don't have anybody to accuse of being a non-moral person as a scientist. But you have those, what Paul was talking about, those people out there that have PhDs and deliberately fudge the data to make some kind of thing for themselves.
And some of those papers appear in Science and Nature, and not just in, you know, backwater journals. And it takes years to figure out that they were faking it. And probably the most famous example was Andrew Wakefield's papers on, you know, on vaccinations, which have now been retracted, and the former Dr. Wakefield has now lost his license to practice medicine.
Well, that's a good thing. One out of a drop, right?
But he did publish peer-reviewed papers, which were the seeds of doubt for the anti-vax movement. And he's still out there making money with speaker fees, going around to these conventions and meetings and so forth.
I'm glad you put a name on it, because that's exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, the perverse incentives, as Paul said, but we have to distinguish the out-and-out crooks, like the people who ran Theranos, who were smart people, who raised billions of dollars, who had very powerful people on their side, and who knew that they were falsifying results, from people who are just either very confused or very deluded. You know, say somebody who's an eminent scientist who had lost a child and who wants to communicate with the spirit world, and they will use their academic credentials to defend spiritualism or something like that. I mean, there's just somebody who's a tragic human story, and we can't compare them to, like I said, the example of Theranos or the papers that Paul was just talking about the vaccine.
Yeah, or was it the Korean stem cells, or
the Korean stem cells?
Some of the Japanese papers that have recently been discredited.
I want to mention real quick that Ryan Wolf has been commenting on and off on the side chat, and one of the things he was talking about was tribalism, and I was going to say something about we're all human, and we're primates are by nature tribal animals and stuff like that. But now he's saying you can only be called a scientist if you well, I guess he means if you have proven something scientific. I'm not actually sure that's true. It's you can be called a scientist if you study whatever science you're into, and
proof is extremely rare.
No, you become a scientist by going to school and learning a specific science or various sciences, and do your homework and that kind of thing. And
well, there's not enough value placed upon things that are not proof, like falsifying claims or replicating previous research and finding out, oh, it doesn't replicate. You know, nobody gets a Nobel Prize for that, but and or even added extra funding for that. But that's the sort of thing we need more of.
Okay, so this guy Ryan Wolf is saying it again. He's saying no scientists need to make something new, original, and scientifically sound that then you can be called a scientist. No, that's not true, Ryan Wolf. A scientist is a scientist, and if he's practicing science, whatever science that might be, a doctor is a scientist. Okay.
Well, actually, I would dispute that.
All right.
Some doctors are scientists.
Yeah. Okay. All
and
right.
some scientists are doctors.
I mean,
but it's not a.
All right.
Some animals are foxes.
I have a hard enough time articulating my one sentence, but you get where I'm coming from. In other words, no, a scientist isn't somebody who has to prove something to be a scientist. No, because there's thousands of scientists out there that haven't, you don't even know about.
Yeah, okay, and a lot of the good work is done that never results in any like grand conclusion, but slowly narrows down the possibilities, or slowly accumulates understanding of something. The folks that are out in the field, doing field biology, watching one species day in and day out, incredibly difficult, hard work. And they write papers, but they don't prove anything. They just slowly understand build our understanding of that species.
And he's saying you need to accomplish.
They deserve something. Respect.
Right, exactly. And now he's doing it again. He's saying you need to accomplish something, etc. Ryan, we just disputed that. So okay, that's the.
Ryan can speak for himself if he likes, but he's using the term in an evaluative sense of saying to be worthy of a scientist, you need to create, and that's just as good a definition of science as any other one. It's just not the one that you share.
Right. Well, okay. So anyway, Ryan, just to put you at ease. I call myself a science enthusiast, not a scientist, because I have no way to claim that I'm any kind of scientist. I'm just a science enthusiast.
And I'm not a scientist. I'm an engineer.
And Paul is an engineer. Although I usually put engineers close to scientists.
And I'm a guest on Paul Carr's podcast. That's all I can say for myself in terms of credentials.
You're a one-man think tank, I understand.
I call Nick more of a historian. I think Nick is more of a historian. He knows his shit.
And Mike Longo's an astronaut teacher.
No, that's like I like there's people who are scientists who practice scientists, and there's people who are scientists who are experts on the subject. So like it's arguable that there's some leeway there, and people start out, many scientists, there's as Patrick said, there's hundreds of thousands of scientists people don't know about for sure that practice science every day, that are active working scientists, that are contributing scientists, and you just start. It's not about, you don't have to go to through a formal education or have formal training to be a scientist, but you do have to study, and you do have to learn, and you do have to practice consistent methods, and you can get to a place. It's not a big deal. It's not something that is up on a pedestal. And I say this because a lot of people who are beginning scientists are really not put down by a lot of people who are professional scientists or who are accomplished or noted in their field. Of course, as I pointed out earlier, jerks are going to be jerks. And that's fine, because that's just how everything is. But the fact of the matter is that most people aren't that way, particularly most people who work in the sciences. They are encouraging, and they are interested, and they are open to new ideas frequently, very frequently. I've been going to space science conferences for a decade. And from the very beginning, if you Google, it says Mike Mongo, astronaut teacher. The very first question kids ask me is, have you been to space? No. And yet here I am in this role. And when I very first started, I think I talked about this before with you Nick, at the 2012 100-year Starship, when I spoke there in Dallas or Houston, and introduced myself. Nick, were you in the room then? Are you there? Anyway?
I was muted. Yes, I was in Houston in 2012. Yes.
Yeah, and so I introduced myself. When I first introduced myself as an astronaut teacher, as a person, I didn't have the sort of credentials that one would imagine is necessary for an astronaut teacher.
You gave yourself permission.
Yeah, exactly.
You gave yourself permission to call yourself an astronaut teacher.
That's right.
And that turned out to be a very good call to make.
Thank you. And so the same thing is true for anyone who pursues science and wants to be a scientist, or wants to be an astronomer, or wants to be, I wouldn't say a doctor. Go get a formal education if you want to be a medical doctor. But
Yeah,
even then, like there's plenty of examples of people who have had to learn medical practices to keep people alive in situations.
Right. But I mean,
these are real things. What about the guy that built his own rocket ship and launched himself recently? God bless his soul. And he lived.
But he was an idiot.
Was that the flat Earth guy?
Yes.
Steam rocket.
But Paul, did you say he's an idiot?
Yes.
No, he's like
verifiable idiot.
But he's clearly not an idiot, because he launched himself in a rocket and survived. He's better than an idiot. He's lucky. A buffoon. Yes, acknowledged.
He's a lucky idiot.
And he's lucky. And I'm grateful that he's lucky, because I didn't want to see a person explode on a launch pad, going up or coming down, or in place. But the point of the story is that a lot of these advancements that we've made have to do with people that just have a natural interest in a topic and pursue it. And said no one should ever shut themselves off, or in Patrick, in your case, limit yourself about how to consider yourself, or how you can be identified. And there's a topic going on Twitter today about women who have acquired PhDs and had not put doctor before their name because they think of it as pretentious. But it turned out that one of the reasons they don't put doctor in front of their name is because of the stuff they have to deal with from people who think, what makes you a doctor? Not what makes you a medical doctor. What makes you a doctor? What makes you think that if you follow the threads, you can see all of these these lucky souls coming out and decrying the achievements of these individuals just based on the fact that they're women. Like saying
I don't
Exactly,
know.
yeah.
My wife has a PhD and she doesn't call herself doctor, and
you have to read the thread.
I think she's
You have
completely
to read the
comfortable
thread,
with that.
Paul.
Well,
And there's a reason. And so, and because of this, because
the
these
prefix
people,
doctor has
because people attack people, those people who attack people are not the rule. Those people who degrade people or bring people down or try to bring people down are not the rule. They're always going to be out there, either trolling or just being jerks, and that is okay. We have to kind of.
Well, I don't think it's okay, but you're right.
No, it's the state of nature.
But anyway, I mean,
You know, Freeman Dyson never had a PhD, and
There you go.
he probably, if the Nobel Prize could be awarded to 4 people instead of 3, he would have been the 4th person.
the prefix doctor has become sort of a joke in this country because of various reasons. One reason is because in Europe and actually in Britain, or is it in all of England, the professor has a higher meaning than doctor, and here in the United States it's the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
You be a professor at a college or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't, without a PhD, and in their way of thinking, and I'm actually leaning towards their way of thinking that the word professor is a higher level, because you are so good you can profess, a particular subject kind of thing. And I just want to say one quick thing to throw a wrench into this entire conversation. Nick, are you in competition with Mike in the most obscure glasses?
My eyesight has really tailed off for the past couple of years, so I can't read small print without putting on reading glasses. So
Well, I think Mike wins the obscure glasses competition. Oh, wait a minute! Until just now, hold on.
I'm using a pair of reading glasses that my father left on the desk in my office.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help
notice. I love your glasses. I didn't even cross my mind.
Patrick, just shut your glasses upside down, and you'll.
No, but Mike's actually has his ear side things turned upside down, so he can wear them upside down. I don't have that.
Oh, they're not upside down. They're
Glasses so big that like
the lenses are made that way. They are. If I flip them, the prescription goes the wrong way because I have different prescriptions on both sides.
Oh.
So they are not upside down. This is how they're constructed. Even the nose piece is carved out.
Yeah, you got the earpieces the other way. I'm just saying that
this is the 4th generation of these.
I wonder maybe Hagrid from Hogwarts, maybe he was his glasses or something. They're so big.
Yeah, they are big. They do the job. And I'm too cheap to go out and buy a cheaper pair of reading glasses.
I got a few laying around here. I'll mail them to you. The $10 drugstore reading glasses.
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, folks, it's after midnight here on the East Coast. I'm going to wrap up. So we have no formal introduction, no formal exit. We are just going to say good night. Oh, good night.
Everybody, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, Mike.
It was a great conversation. Thank you all.
A lot of fun.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.